Hello everyone, and welcome to 100 Dalmathan's analysis and reporting on the Trump administration's military interventions and regime change plans going on in Latin America. So this year, at the very beginning of the year, the United States launched a very aggressive, bold military intervention, sending in a Delta Force team into Venezuela to forcibly capture and arrest the dictator of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro, and his wife, Celia Flores. While doing that, the United States dropped bombs, the U.S. Air Force dropped bombs on Venezuela in the capital, Caracas, mostly, I guess, as a distraction to overwhelm and confuse the Venezuelan military. And the U.S. Delta Force, they were able to go in a gunfight with Nicolas Maduro's bodyguards, and they captured Maduro and his wife, Celia Flores. And they are now in U.S. custody, awaiting going to trial.
So now the big question is, what happens next in Venezuela? What is the Trump administration going to do next? Honestly, I don't know. All I can do is guess and speculate. But honestly, and no one else really knows what's going to happen next, because it is very unpredictable. So what it looks like's happening for right now is the United States, the Trump administration, decided only to remove Maduro from office, but leave the rest of the dictatorship in power. So now Delcy Rodriguez, who was the vice president under Maduro, is now the de facto president. The United States is pressuring the Chavista socialist dictatorship in Venezuela to allow American oil companies back into Venezuela, and the United States wants full access to all of Venezuela's oil resources. The United States also wants Venezuela to cut off relations with countries like China and Russia and Cuba. So the United States did not do a full regime change, as some people were expecting. Some people thought that Trump was going to put the opposition leader Maria Corina Machado in office after overthrowing the Venezuelan dictatorship, but that has not happened. Nicolas Maduro is basically just being a scapegoat right now. Although he was a dictator and everything, what the U.S. is putting him on trial for, like possession of machine guns and fentanyl trafficking. I mean, some of that is just not true. But did he probably have links to probably drug trafficking, smuggling his government? Probably. But, fentanyl does not come from Venezuela. There is no production of fentanyl going on there. Most of the fentanyl is actually coming from China to Mexico. So the U.S. is putting Nicolas Maduro on trial, and Celia Flores, his wife, is also going on trial. They're probably going to, lose the case, but who knows if Trump might have other plans with him and might end up pardoning him down the road. You never know. So speaking about the oil, a lot of American oil companies, such as ExxonMobil, have expressed caution about going back and doing business in Venezuela. They appear to be reluctant. One of the only oil companies that has been working in Venezuela is Chevron. But others like ExxonMobil, Shell, they are very reluctant. They don't really appear willing to want to invest millions of dollars to rebuild Venezuela's oil refineries, all the infrastructure. It would cost them so much money, and they're concerned about security and stability in Venezuela also. So, if they're reluctant, all the oil wealth and profits that Trump has been talking about isn't going to just quickly happen overnight. The dictatorship of Venezuela has released many political prisoners. However, a lot of the armed paramilitary pro government groups like the colectivos and chavistas, a lot of pro government militias who are armed, are still roaming about Venezuela and are intimidating any anti government protesters. And so the Venezuelan people are still not free from violence and repression. And if the United States continues to allow, the current leadership, military leadership in Venezuela, and Delcy Rodriguez and the rest of the people still in power, there won't be, elections or freedom happening in Venezuela. And if the United States tries to put Maria Corina Machado in power, if it did, the military leadership of Venezuela would rebel against her. There is the high potential, of a civil war breaking out in Venezuela with all the different political factions competing in that country. And then you also have to take in consideration other actors, such as Colombian communist guerrilla groups like the ELN, who also operate in Venezuela and can cause trouble. Venezuela is a tinderbox, and it is a powder keg, and it's highly unstable. Anything that could fall apart with that government could turn into a civil war. And if that were to happen, there definitely would be an American military intervention, because the United States would want to protect all the oil infrastructure in that country. And that would be a really messy war if it comes down to that for everybody, including the United States military. I do not think we have seen the end of American military intervention in Venezuela or possible future regime change actions in that country. There's only so long that the United States can try to keep all of the naval forces stationed in the Caribbean while it's trying to control other messes happening in the Middle East and elsewhere. But I don't think we've seen the end of any more American intervention in Venezuela. What I want to also talk about in some next videos is Cuba and Nicaragua, because already the Trump administration is threatening Cuba and wanting to topple their government. And a lot of Florida neocons are also talking about wanting to overthrow Daniel Ortega in Nicaragua. So I will talk about those in another video. In the meantime, we have no idea what's going to happen next for Venezuela.